Hey guys, tonight we're going back, farther back than empires, farther even than memory, to the moment when wandering began to slow and staying started to feel like a plan. We're going to stand beside the first waterholes that became neighborhoods, listen to the first fires that decided not to travel, and feel the earth underfoot as it learns the word home. Before we begin, take a moment to hit like and subscribe, but only if you really connect with what I create here. And if you're awake enough, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that soft flickering glow, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into dawn that smells like damp reeds and wood smoke. The river has pulled back after its seasonal swell, leaving a necklace of dark, silty banks that shine like ink. Dragonflies skim the surface. In the low ground, wild barley leans toward the water, heavy with seed. Your people, still wanderers, still light on the earth, have returned to this bend because it forgives you. The fishing is easy, the shade generous, the mud gentle to feet that have gone far. Someone drops a bundle and says, "Here." Not forever. No one knows that word yet in this way, but for longer than last time. Tents go up, at first a half-hearted forest of poles and hide that says we're not staying, we're just resting. Then a few days pass. The wind begins to know your names. A lattice of reed walls appears, plastered with mud that dries warm and honey-colored in the sun. The first hearth is nothing but an obedient circle of stones, but it anchors evening so efficiently that other tasks learn to orbit it: grinding, gossip, the small ceremonials of cooking and quiet. You sit by the water's edge with a woven basket and strip seeds from the barley heads into your lap. The kernels collect like tiny suns. Somebody jokes that this is what counting stars tastes like: crunchy, a little bitter, surprisingly filling. By nightfall, there's porridge in a blackened pot, and the smell of it, nutty, sweet, turns strangers into neighbors. A mainstream historical fact settles into the steam. People in this region, later called the Levant and Mesopotamia, really did begin clustering around rivers to harvest wild cereals long before formal farming. Think of the Natufians, semi-sedentary foragers who camped near reliable water and worked the same patches of land again and again. It wasn't a revolution. It was a habit that stuck. You learn the day's rhythm without deciding to. Morning is water and fish. Midday is reeds and repair. Late afternoon is seed, hand sifting, hand saving, hands memorizing what works. A shallow pit is dug, lined with grasses and a little ash, then covered with a lid of clay and a light layer of stones. The basket goes in. You pat the earth shut and feel the quiet thrill of a new spell, food that lasts past tomorrow. Quirky detail: somebody tucks a pretty shell into the pit for luck, then forgets about it. Millennia later, an excavator will puzzle over why anyone salted grain with jewelry. At night, you notice how the fire's smoke finds the same path upward every time. Someone suggests a hole in the roof to coax it out faster. A reed mat becomes a roof. The smoke listens. A corner appears. A protected place for a sleeping mat, another for baskets. The hearth that once sat in the center of open ground now lives inside a decision. You feel it like an extra heartbeat in the room. Warmth no longer belongs to the wind. Out by the river, a child tries something you didn't ask for. She presses barley into the wet silt with her heel, one seed at a time, then laughs and runs off to chase a lizard. Weeks later, thin green lines write themselves in the mud where her small feet stamped. Everyone pretends they're not surprised, but you all are. The ground remembers. You pretend you weren't watching it as though it were a miracle performing for your benefit, but you were. Days lengthen. Your collection of just until we leave objects becomes an inventory of permanence. Grinding stones too heavy to drag, a clay pot that cracked and then was mended with pitch. You call it medicine for jars. A fire dog shaped from mud so the cooking pot sits secure above coals. When a storm comes, you test your walls with your back and find them new and stubborn. They vibrate and hold. The rain moves along the roof. Inside, the fire keeps whispering like a patient teacher. You still hunt, still range, but fewer feet wander, and the ones that do always circle back. The old men complain they can't see the horizon from within the little lanes forming between huts. You tease them gently, tell them the sky can bend around a house if it likes you. At night, lying on a reed mat, you watch embers fall into a geometry of red that feels as deliberate as constellations. The flame is a tiny city, and your city is a slow flame. A fact lands while you listen to crickets. The earliest semi-settled communities did not start with plows, but with return. People returned to the same seasonal camps so often that the earth remembered their footpaths and the river learned their reflections. Then, habit became architecture. Historians still argue whether climate shoved this change along. The younger Dryas cold snap, perhaps, making dependable food feel urgent, or whether people simply developed a taste for feasting and wanted surer supplies, parties being powerful engines of invention. You decide it was both. The weather made you cautious, the feasts made you bold. You lay your palm in wet clay and lift it away, leaving a handprint on a wall just finished. It looks like the wall saying hello back. Another person presses theirs beside yours. Then a smaller one, sticky with date pulp and mud, overlaps both. The wall becomes a register of belonging. Tomorrow, when the plaster dries, someone will smear it with ochre, and your ghost hands will glow like embers frozen in daylight. Not that it's all softness. Mosquitoes have discovered that your ankles taste like a new cuisine. Smoke keeps most of them at bay, but one finds exactly the spot behind your knee you can't reach. You mutter that this is the first municipal tax, paid in blood, collected nightly. Everyone laughs. The sound rolls out of the doorway into dusk. Jokes fit inside walls better than they fit in open plain, and that feels like progress. You walk the perimeter at twilight. It isn't a fence, not yet, just the far edge where houses give up and the river takes over. Grasses bend in a unanimous bow, showing you the direction of the wind. Farther along, you find someone tracing lines in the dirt with a stick, connecting one doorway to another, and then to the fire pit, then to the water jars. Paths, they say, almost shy. You nod. The lines look like memory rehearsing. The first theft is small and ridiculous. A boy pockets an extra fish from the communal basket and hides it badly under a mat. A dog finds it with the clarity of destiny. The scolding is gentle, theatrical. The lesson is clear. If we're staying, sharing must learn an inside voice. You notice how quickly a village invents manners the way a river invents banks, by persistent motion and a little erosion. The seasons turn. When the barley ripens, you cut it with blades of flint hafted into wooden handles, and the sound of it, scrape, rustle, whisper, threads the valley like a long, sleepy song. Chaff clings everywhere, in your hair, in the bend of your elbow, in your bed. You decide it is the glitter of an early party theme. The bread is better this time and the time after that. Someone makes a mistake and discovers flatbread slapped onto the hot wall of the clay-lined pit puffs beautifully. The village decides accidentally that this is the correct way forever. You burn the first one heroically. Everyone swears it tastes like smoke. And lesson, which is to say, good. At night, elders tell stories of when the world was all path and no place. The children listen politely, then fall asleep before the refrain. You watch their slow breathing and think softly that security has its own music. Two fires hissing, a pot tick-ticking as it cools, a sleeping child sighing as she rolls toward the warm wall. You don't know the word domestic, but the room teaches you its conjugations. A dog curls by the door and decides you are its idea. You scratch its ears, recognizing that this is likely the first household pet to train a human through eye contact alone. In the morning, it herds you expertly toward the river. You begin to suspect dogs invented cities, so we'd finally sit where they could keep track of us. You step outside and look back at the hut from a little distance. Its corners are slightly crooked, the roof tufted where reeds refuse to be disciplined, the smoke hole blackened. It is imperfect, and it is completely sufficient. Beyond it, other roofs repeat the same sentence with charming misspellings. Together they make a paragraph you can walk through. The moon rises, a pale bowl you could almost drink from. Reflected in the river, it looks like a second village turned upside down, wobbling gently on dark water. For a moment, you can't tell which one seems more real, the one you can touch, warm and smelling of clay, or the one that glides away from your fingers, always whole, always almost. You choose both. You choose to stay and you choose to keep the sky. You choose the patient miracle of seed and the unrushed invention of walls, the laughter that catches under a roof and the path that remembers your weight. You choose the slow, humble courage of the first hearth that simply refuses to move. The night leans in. You lie down on the reed mat, the air sweet with ash and barley and the faint mineral taste of water cooled in a clay jar. Outside, the river turns in its sleep and the reeds answer. Inside, the embers breathe, glow, dim, glow, as if the fire itself is practicing how to be a city when morning comes. Morning rises in colors soft as wet clay, pink, gray, a faint blue that barely manages to light the river. You wake to the sound of someone grinding grain outside, the slow rhythmic scrape of stone on stone. The sound is ancient already, though no one realizes it yet. Smoke drifts through the roof hole, carrying the scent of yesterday's fire and new bread. You stretch, step outside, and the air greets you like a warm hand on your face. The sun hasn't yet burned off the mist, so the houses look like islands floating in cloud. Walls lean gently, reed roofs glisten with dew. You can hear laughter somewhere down the lane, children chasing a goat that does not wish to be chased. A woman waves you over. She's kneeling beside a hearth, her hair tied back with twine, arms dusted in flour. She gestures to the clay oven she's built into the wall, proud of how it holds heat. You can feel it when you step closer. The gentle radiating warmth, the sweet, nutty smell of dough browning. She slides a flat loaf from the wall and tears a piece for you. It's smoky, crisp, soft in the center. Civilization tastes like this. The hearth, once a fire ring in the dirt, is now architecture. Shaped, walled, a heart with arteries. The air inside the home swirls upward, smoke escaping through a proper vent, not just a hole. There's rhythm in how the work moves. Knead, bake, sweep, feed. Children gather near the warmth, chattering like birds. The home breathes. Across the lane, a man is stacking jars along a wall. They're filled with grain and lentils, sealed with clay lids. The pattern is neat, almost ceremonial. Each jar hums faintly when you tap it, a chorus of promise. You realize that for the first time, food is no longer a question but an answer. The fear of hunger still lingers, but quieter now, fading like smoke. As the sun climbs, the lanes fill with movement. A boy carries a jug of water from the river. A group of women walk in line, balancing baskets of reeds for weaving. Someone repairs a roof with fresh thatch, his hands moving quick and sure. Dogs weave through legs, tails flicking dust. You follow the lane to the edge of the settlement, where walls give way to fields. The ground is soft and dark, scarred by the shallow furrows of simple digging sticks. People work in silence, heads bent, shadows stretching long behind them. When one pauses to wipe sweat from her brow, she looks up at you and smiles. Her face glows with the quiet pride of creation, the knowledge that what grows here grows because she stayed. A gust of wind sweeps across the plain, stirring the barley into rippling motion. It looks like the surface of the sea, green waves rolling toward the horizon. For a moment, it's hard to tell whether the earth is breathing or you are. By afternoon, the air hums with heat. The smell of baking bread thickens, blending with the sharp tang of smoke and clay. The sound of work fades into a steady rhythm, the pounding of grain, the creak of wooden frames, the low murmur of voices trading news. You pass a group gathered near a newly built wall. The men are arguing in good humor about its height, each claiming to know best. The women laugh, shaking their heads, and keep stacking bricks while the men talk. Children smear their hands in wet clay, pressing them onto the wall in a pattern that looks like falling leaves, a history written in handprints. As evening comes, the air cools and smoke rises from every roof. The lanes glow faintly in the firelight, alive with the hum of voices. Someone begins to play a hollow reed flute, slow, uncertain, but sweet. The tune carries through the night air, winding around corners, drifting over the fields. Inside the homes, the fires crackle softly. Families eat from shared bowls, the sound of chewing and laughter blending with the whisper of flames. The hearths flicker against the walls, painting everything in bronze light. Shadows dance on clay, turning each home into a theater of warmth. You step back outside. From the hill above the river, the view stops your breath. The village glows like a constellation brought to earth. Fires twinkling, smoke rising in soft ribbons. The same stars that once guided hunters now look down on builders. The reflections on the river shimmer and twist until it's impossible to tell whether the stars are above or below. For a long while, you just stand there, listening. The sound of the city, though no one yet calls it that, is gentle but insistent. The sigh of fires, the low murmur of people settling for the night, the heartbeat of walls cooling the dark. You realize this is the first music ever made that wasn't meant for dancing. It's the sound of belonging. You walk slowly back through the lanes. The clay under your feet is still warm from the day's sun. Every doorway glows faintly. Inside, you glimpse the lives unfolding. A mother brushing her child's hair, a man mending a net, an old woman whispering a story to herself. The walls hold all of it, the echoes, the heat, the hopes. You return to your own hearth. The fire has burned low, the coals pulsing red. You add a handful of twigs and watch as the light brightens. The glow reaches the far wall, tracing the faint outline of a child's handprint, half faded, half immortal. The fire breathes, and for a moment you think you hear it whisper, soft, patient, certain, stay. You lie down beside it, the reed mat creaking gently beneath you. The air smells of smoke and barley and river wind. Outside, a dog barks once, then settles. The night wraps around the houses like a blanket, and there in that warmth, you understand that the hearth isn't just a place to eat or sleep, it's a map. Every wall built after this, every city that will rise and fall will be traced from this flame. The corner of a house is the corner of a dream, the place where the infinite decided to take shape. The last ember flares, soft and slow. You close your eyes, the world exhales. The first city sleeps. The next dawn comes bright and sharp, the air tasting of dust and smoke. The sky has shifted to that deep, steady blue that means the heat will last all day. From the roof, you can see the world shimmering, as though the whole plain has caught a fever. The houses huddle close now, packed shoulder to shoulder. Each one is a little taller than the last, each wall a little straighter, each doorway framed by wooden beams scavenged from the riverbank. The lanes between them are narrow, shaded, and full of movement. Someone is always passing, carrying grain, a baby, a bundle of reeds, a clay jar. The hum of the day begins early. A woman calls to her son from a doorway. A pot breaks, sharp and clean, and someone laughs instead of swearing. A rooster crows, late and lazy. You watch it all from above, the life of the village pulsing quietly below you like blood through a body. It's strange how the air itself feels different now. There's weight to it, a sense of enclosure. You can smell not just the river or the fields, but people. Sweat, grain dust, smoke, breath. Once, those scents meant impermanence. Now, they mean home. You climb down from the roof, your bare feet sliding along the wooden ladder polished smooth by use. The ground is warm already. You join the others at the edge of the field where the irrigation trench snakes outward from the river. The water glints in the sunlight, narrow and steady. You can see your reflection bending in it, broken into pieces by the flow. The water is life here. It feeds the fields, fills the jars, cools the air. Children wade in it, chasing tiny fish. They build small dams and channels with their hands, mimicking what they've seen the adults do. You realize they're not just playing, they're learning how to shape the world. By midday, the heat is heavy enough to make the air ripple. Work slows. People rest in the shade, talking softly, sharing water from clay jars that sweat in the sun. The jars are round and sturdy, patterned with fingerprints. You touch one, and it's cool despite the heat, a small miracle of design. A man sits beside you, his hands stained with pigment. He's a potter, one of the first in this new rhythm of life. He points toward the horizon where the hills shimmer and says something about clay. How every color comes from a different place, how the earth beneath each village will mark its people in its hue. You look at your hands, at the faint red dust clinging to your skin, and think he's right. The land itself is beginning to wear your fingerprints. Later, you walk back through the lanes. The houses have changed again. New walls are rising where empty ground once was. Someone's built a roof with an opening in the center, a courtyard, open to the sky. Another family has carved niches into their walls like small shelves for storing pots, tools, trinkets. The idea of space is evolving. Each wall now has meaning, each corner a purpose. You pass a doorway where a group of elders sit talking. Their hair is gray, their faces carved by sun and time. They speak of boundaries, not of land, but of behavior. How loud should one's laughter be at night? Who takes water first from the canal? Where should waste be thrown? They talk until the sun moves, their words shaping invisible walls as real as the ones of clay. The day stretches. Smoke from 100 small fires curls into the blue, carrying the scent of roasting grain, drying fish, boiling herbs. You stop to watch a woman stir a pot with a long stick, the steam rising around her like a veil. She hums softly, a tune without words, just rhythm. You realize that the hum matches the sway of her hand, the slow pulse of her stirring. The song continues even after you leave. It blends with the others, the hammering of flint tools, the creak of woven baskets, the faint laughter from distant rooftops. The village is becoming a single voice, a song with no beginning and no end. By evening, the air cools. The light turns bronze. Shadows stretch across the lanes, long and soft. You stand by the well, where people gather before dark to fill jars. The sound of water splashing echoes against the walls, rhythmic and calm. Someone lights a torch nearby. The flame catches, flickers, steadies. The glow bounces off faces and clay and eyes. A girl begins to dance. She's barefoot, her feet dusted red. Her arms sway with the torchlight, casting wild shapes against the walls. The others watch, laughing softly. The sound is warm, full. You can feel it settle deep in your chest. When the stars appear, the fires burn low and the village exhales. You lie on your back, the ground cool against your spine. The stars blur in the smoke above you, trembling like embers. You think of all the nights spent wandering, all the paths that led nowhere. Here at last, there is stillness. You can feel it through the earth. A slow vibration, the heartbeat of walls cooling in the night. The city is dreaming itself into being. You close your eyes, and the last thing you hear is the faint sound of water trickling through the canal, a whisper from the river that will someday carry whole civilizations on its back. The night deepens. The fires fade. But beneath the silence, the pulse continues. The earth has learned to hold you, and you have learned to trust its arms. The city sleeps. The heat begins to rise long before the sun clears the horizon. You wake to a faint shimmer in the air, the smell of cooling ashes and night-blooming flowers. The ground beneath you feels solid, baked hard by years of fire and footsteps. When you stand, the dust clings to your skin like memory. The settlement is larger now, dozens of homes stretching outward from the river, each pressed so close that their walls seem to breathe together. You can walk half a morning without leaving the sound of human voices. Smoke lifts in thin threads from hundreds of small fires, merging into one great haze that hangs over the rooftops. You follow the sound of hammering. At the edge of the village, a group of builders work in rhythm, lifting, pressing, stacking bricks in neat rows. The walls climb higher than before. Some houses even have 2 levels now, reached by ladders made of bundled branches. The air hums with the energy of progress. A man stands on a half-built wall, shouting for more clay. He gestures with his trowel as if conducting a song, and below him others mix mud with straw in shallow pits. Their laughter carries, low and good-natured. You realize that no one here builds alone. Every house is a group project, every wall the result of 10 pairs of hands. You watch them for a while, then walk back toward the heart of the settlement. The lanes twist and narrow until you find yourself in the main square, though no one calls it that yet. It's just an open space where people naturally gather, a patch of hard, packed earth surrounded by low walls. Here the air is thick with the smell of grain. Women sit in small groups, grinding barley between stones. The sound is steady, hypnotic, scrape, scrape, tap. Children play nearby, drawing shapes in the dust with sticks. Some of the older boys help carry baskets of grain to a shared storehouse, a large structure built near the center of the settlement. Its doorway is tall, its interior cool and dark. You step inside and breathe in the smell of earth and harvest. Clay jars line the walls. their mouths sealed with mud. Some are marked with tiny carvings, lines, dots, circles. The symbols mean nothing to you now, but you sense their power. Each one stands for ownership, for memory, for promise, the beginning of record keeping. When you step back outside, the light nearly blinds you. A breeze moves through the lanes, carrying the scent of ash and wet clay. A potter sits nearby, shaping a vessel on a slow-turning wheel. His hands are stained red from pigment. He hums under his breath, the same tune repeated endlessly as the jar rises between his palms. The clay responds to touch the way the earth responds to rain. By midday, the air is alive with sound, voices, tools, laughter. Donkeys bray, birds cry, dogs bark from rooftops. The city, if you can call it that, has found its rhythm. You feel it under your skin like a drumbeat. Work, rest, trade, share. At the edge of the square, two men argue over grain. The words are sharp, but the gestures are soft. A small crowd gathers. After a while, an elder steps forward, gray-haired and calm. She listens, nods, and makes a ruling. One man will give a basket of grain, the other will share his fishing net for a week. The crowd murmurs approval. Justice, spoken and remembered, is born. As the sun begins to tilt west, you walk toward the river. The water has changed too. Canals now branch from it like veins, feeding the fields that stretch far beyond sight. People move along the banks, checking gates, clearing silt, redirecting flow. The earth no longer dictates its own course. You do. You crouch at the edge of a canal and let the water run over your hand. It's cool, smooth, alive. You realize that this manipulation of flow, this partnership with the river, is the true invention. Cities don't rise because people stop moving. They rise because people learn to move the world instead. Evening comes slow and golden. The air cools, shadows stretch. You follow the lanes back toward home, passing families gathered in doorways. The fires are lit again, each one small but bright. The smell of cooking fills the air. Bread, fish, lentils, herbs. Someone's child plays a tune on a hollow reed flute, and others join in by clapping. The sound echoes between the walls like laughter caught in stone. You climb onto a rooftop. From here, the world looks transformed. The glow from the fires paints the houses in shades of amber. The river beyond gleams like a ribbon of gold. The city hums softly beneath you, a living thing. As the stars appear, you notice how the patterns above echo the ones below. The fires form constellations on Earth, lines of light connecting home to home. You can't tell where the sky ends and the settlement begins. The two have learned to mirror each other perfectly. You lie back on the cool clay roof, listening. You can hear the steady breath of hundreds of people, talking, laughing, whispering, sleeping. It sounds like the tide rising and falling in waves. You close your eyes and imagine the years stretching forward. More walls, more fields, more lives. The thought should frighten you, the weight of what's coming, but it doesn't. It feels right. You think of the first night by the river, the single fire flickering in the wind. That spark has become 100, 1,000. It burns in every hearth, every heart, and in that warmth you finally understand. The city isn't built of clay or reed or water. It's built of time. Every sunrise laid like a brick, every breath pressed into the walls, every heartbeat another step toward forever. You smile, eyes half closed. Somewhere below, a baby cries and someone hums to soothe it. The melody rises and falls, carried on the night air. The city listens and keeps breathing. The morning light spills over the rooftops, painting every wall gold. The air is already alive before the sun climbs high. You can hear it, clay jars clinking as they're filled, donkeys braying, the rhythmic slap of wet laundry against stone. The whole city wakes like one long inhale. The smell of baking bread seeps through the lanes, thick and warm. Women fan the ovens, their faces glowing with sweat and pride. The bread has changed. It's softer now, leavened with something invisible that grows in the dough overnight. They don't know the word yeast, but they know the taste of time. You walk toward the square, the dust still cool beneath your feet. The streets curve gently, worn smooth by thousands of steps. They were never planned, but they know where they're going. Along the walls, reed mats hang to dry, painted with red and black designs. Someone has begun to decorate the world. The sound of metal draws you toward the edge of the settlement. There, a young man kneels beside a small furnace, coaxing a fire hotter than any cooking flame. The air around him shimmers. He uses a pipe to blow through the coals, feeding the heat until it roars white. Inside, a lump of ore melts slowly, turning to liquid fire. When he pours it into a mold, it hardens into something extraordinary, a small, sharp blade gleaming like the sun itself. He grins, proud, astonished. This is the beginning of tools that will outlive hands. He tests it on a reed stalk. It cuts clean through. The sound is crisp, final, thrilling. You realize this is how the first crafts were born, not from grand design, but from wonder. Curiosity made solid. The blade will lead to new kinds of work, carving, engraving, shaping. Soon others will try it too. A neighbor starts hammering copper into thin sheets. Another makes bracelets that glint in the sunlight. Objects begin to tell stories of status, skill, and beauty. The city learns to express itself. By noon, the air hums with creation. In one courtyard, potters turn their wheels, hands moving faster than thought. The spinning clay rises and narrows, smooth and perfect. In another, women dye cloth in vats of color, red from crushed berries, blue from rare stones ground to dust. Strings of beads hang from every beam, catching the light. The lanes smell of wet earth, metal, and dye. The sound of work blends into something like music, rhythmic, continuous, almost holy. In the center of the settlement, you find something new, a raised platform built of stacked bricks. At first, it looks like another storehouse, but then you notice the offerings laid at its base, grains, shells, small clay figures of animals. People kneel there at dawn, whispering to the sky. This is the first temple. It's humble, no priests yet, no marble or gold. But the idea has already taken root. The people have built a place not for living, but for meaning. You sit nearby and listen. Someone chants softly, voice low and steady, half song, half prayer. The sound drifts through the square, mixing with the hammering of copper and the turning of the wheel. Work and worship have become the same thing. When the day begins to fade, you walk toward the river. The sun sets red and wide, and the water mirrors it perfectly. A flock of birds crosses the sky in a black curve, their wings catching the last light. You can feel the day cooling around you, the heat sliding off the earth. By the time you return, the fires are burning. The air glows orange, the walls breathing light. The artisans have stopped working. Now they sit together, eating and talking. The smith's hands are black with soot, but his smile is gold. Someone plays a drum, just a skin stretched over a pot, but the sound rolls through the square like a heartbeat. The rhythm is simple, steady, irresistible. People clap along, feet tapping the dust. Then someone laughs and begins to dance. The others follow. The night fills with movement, with rhythm, with joy. You watch from the edge, smiling. The stars overhead are bright, scattered across the sky like spilled grain. It's strange. You've seen nights darker and quieter than this, but this one feels alive. The fires flicker in patterns that echo the constellations. The city below is its own universe, glowing, breathing, endless. You sit on a low wall and breathe it in. The smoke, the laughter, the pulse. The world is still simple, but it's no longer small. And as the music fades into the soft murmur of sleep, you understand that every hammer strike, every breath, every laugh has built something more than walls. The city is not a place anymore. It's a living idea. The hearths hum quietly, the fires dim, the stars burn above the roofs. You close your eyes and the sound of the city breathing carries you into dreams made of clay and light. The morning begins before the light. You wake to the low murmur of voices and the rustle of reed mats being lifted, the quiet rituals of people who now have days worth marking. The air is cool, almost cold, and you can smell rain even though the sky is still dark. Somewhere beyond the fields, thunder murmurs like a god turning in its sleep. You step outside and the earth greets you with softness. Mud, freshly turned and rich. In the distance, silhouettes move along the riverbank, small against the coming dawn. They're checking the irrigation channels again. Every season now depends on them. The river gives life, but it also decides who pays for it. The sun rises red and slow. It turns the river into liquid fire and catches on the wet clay walls, making them shine. You hear a child laugh. You hear someone calling out greetings between doorways. You hear a cough, a goat, a splash of water. 1,000 sounds of ordinary life layered so thick that silence no longer exists here. You walk toward the fields. The barley sways like ocean waves, green to gold in the early light. People move through it methodically, cutting stalks with bronze sickles. The metal flashes like sunlight trapped in their hands. Every motion feels deliberate, practiced, a rhythm of survival turned into ritual. By mid-morning, the harvest songs begin. They are simple, repeating lines that carry across the wind. Each verse praises something ordinary: the sun for warmth, the earth for kindness, the river for mercy. No one calls it worship. It's just gratitude sung out loud, the kind that fills the chest and keeps hands steady. Back in the village, the air buzzes with work. The grain arrives in baskets and jars, carried by people who joke and argue as they go. The square becomes a market. There are traders now, people who bring things from elsewhere. Stones of strange color, cloth of a texture you've never felt before, tiny shells from a sea too far to imagine. You pick one up, a spiral no bigger than your thumb, and roll it between your fingers. It hums faintly, like it remembers the sound of waves. The man who sold it to you grins, his teeth bright against the dust. He speaks in a dialect you barely understand, but his hands tell the story. He's traveled far, he's seen water wider than sky. Trade. That's the new word everyone's learning. Exchange has become its own language, a pot of grain for a tool, a jar of oil for a small blue bead. Value no longer lives only in the fields. It flows now, like the river itself, through conversation, through trust. At noon, the sun stands high and merciless. The market slows. People find shade where they can, under walls, under awnings, under the shadows of their neighbors. The heat glues the city together. The air smells of dust, sweat, and cooling clay. You can hear a pot cracking somewhere, the faint ping of heat against imperfection. You wander toward the new buildings rising near the square. The tallest one catches your eye. It's tiered, wider at the base, tapering as it climbs. Workers move along it like ants, carrying baskets of clay up ladders of woven rope. From its summit, a banner of cloth flaps in the wind, the first gesture of height for its own sake. Someone nearby calls it the high place. You watch as offerings are carried up the ramp, grain, milk, small carved animals. The people bow their heads at the base. It's not fear you see in them, it's awe. Historians, if they could watch, would argue about this moment, whether cities made gods or gods made cities. But standing here, it's impossible to separate the two. The act of building upward feels like a conversation with the sky. By late afternoon, the shadows stretch long. The workers climb down, their feet coated in clay, their faces streaked with soot. They're laughing, tossing jokes about the tower touching the sun. You smile, even though you don't know yet that this instinct to reach, to stack, to rise will never stop. Evening slides in quietly. The sky glows orange, then violet. People gather near the river to wash away the dust of the day. The water is warm, shallow, gentle. Children splash each other, shrieking with delight. Parents call half-heartedly for calm, but don't mean it. You sit on the bank, feet in the current. The river hums. It's seen everything. The first tents, the first walls, the first arguments, the first songs. It will outlive this city and the next after that. But tonight it belongs to you. The fires light one by one across the village, their reflections trembling in the water. The air cools. The stars come out. Someone begins to play a flute again, the same haunting tune you've heard since childhood. The sound floats over the roof, slips down the alleys, mixes with laughter and quiet talk. You close your eyes and listen. The city is breathing. You can hear its pulse in the wind, in the splash of water, in the crackle of fire. Somewhere a potter shapes a new vessel. Somewhere else, a child dreams of a tower touching the stars. Somewhere a trader counts his beads. Somewhere, a woman whispers a prayer to the earth beneath her home. All of it, every sound, every motion, folds together into something greater, something eternal. The city has become more than a place. It's a memory that keeps building itself. You breathe in the cool night air. It smells of smoke, clay, and the faint sweetness of barley drying in the dark. The stars above shimmer like embers. The fires below echo them perfectly. You lean back, let the night cradle you, and think, this is only the beginning. The next morning comes with a brightness that feels older than the city itself. The air hums with the scent of wet earth. Last night's rain has left everything gleaming. The alleys glisten, puddles shimmer like bits of broken sky, and each step leaves a dark footprint that quickly fades in the sun. You can hear laughter before you see anyone. The sound of children splashing barefoot through the waterlogged paths, their joy ricocheting off clay walls. You follow the noise until you reach the square. The storm has washed away the dust, leaving the walls clean, their colors vivid in the morning light. Someone has painted patterns along the base of the temple, a chain of spirals, each slightly uneven, but full of care. The pigments are made from earth and berries, the red deep as fire, the blue faint as shadow. It's the first kind of writing, even if no one calls it that yet. A way for walls to remember. The smell of baking bread returns, familiar and grounding. Near the center of the square, ovens glow again, their mouths breathing slow waves of heat. You pass a woman singing softly as she works, her rhythm timed perfectly with the flick of her hands. She's teaching her daughter the same song. You realize it's not just bread she's passing down, it's time itself, measured in music. Farther along, traders are unpacking. Their carts creak, wooden wheels dripping from the night's rain. You watch as they lift strange objects from woven sacks, dried dates from the south, obsidian blades from the mountains, beads made of turquoise. The colors gleam even in the half-light. Each object carries a whisper of somewhere else. The city, still young, already has roots that reach far beyond its walls. You wander through the market, listening to the voices. The traders speak in accents you've never heard before. Thick and melodic, they point, bargain, laugh, gesture. Every exchange is a kind of ceremony. You notice something small but extraordinary, a handful of clay tokens shaped like tiny cones and spheres. The traders count them carefully, sliding them from palm to palm. It's not just barter anymore, it's accounting. You pick one up, its surface smooth from touch. It feels like the beginning of abstraction, like the first spark of mathematics warming in someone's mind. A way to measure not just goods, but trust. The day grows hot, the market loud. The smell of roasting fish mixes with the sharp tang of clay dust and sweat. Children chase a chicken through the crowd while an old man shouts good-naturedly behind them. Laughter spills down every lane. You realize that the city's heart isn't its walls or its temple. It's this sound, the hum of living. Later, you find yourself drawn toward the outskirts. Beyond the last row of houses, fields stretch wide and green. Farmers move slowly among the rows, their hands deep in the soil. You crouch beside one, a woman with arms strong from years of harvest. She shows you how the new seed behaves differently. Taller stalks, heavier heads. They've been saving and planting the best grain each season without naming the practice. In doing so, they've invented agriculture itself. You look at the fields and realize something. The city no longer relies on the wild. It has begun to feed itself. The rhythm of life now follows the cycle of planting and cutting, storing and baking. It's a new kind of time, not measured by stars, but by seasons. As the afternoon deepens, clouds gather again. The air thickens with the promise of another storm. People hurry to secure their goods, cover the ovens, lead the animals to shelter. The first drops fall fat and warm, drumming on the roofs. The sound grows until it's a roar, the whole city vibrating beneath the weight of the sky. You take shelter under an awning, watching the rain hammer the earth. The streets become rivers, the canals overflow. But no one panics. People laugh, shout, splash through the flood. They've built for this. They've learned the rhythm of the river's moods. The storm breaks just before sunset. The clouds split open, revealing a strip of gold along the horizon. Steam rises from the roofs in ghostly waves. The whole city gleams. You step into the square again, shoes squelching in the mud. The temple glows in the fading light, its walls streaked but still standing strong. Someone begins to drum, a low, steady rhythm that rolls across the wet ground. Others join in, clapping, stamping, adding voices. It's not a celebration of anything specific, just survival, perhaps, or gratitude. The sound grows until it feels like the earth itself is keeping time. You tilt your head back. The sky is vast and bruised with twilight. Birds wheel in great arcs above, their wings catching the last light. The air smells of wet clay and smoke and barley, a scent you've come to know as home. When darkness settles, the city begins to glow again. The fires flicker one by one, their reflections shimmering in the puddles like twin constellations. You walk slowly back toward your house. Every doorway you pass hums with quiet conversation, with laughter, with the scrape of bowls. Inside, the fire has burned low. You feed it a few reeds and sit cross-legged beside it, listening to the soft crackle. Outside, rain drips from the roof in steady rhythm. You think of the traders, the farmers, the builders, the singers, all the hands that shape this place, each leaving something behind. The city isn't finished. It never will be. It grows like a living thing, slow and certain, patient as stone. You stretch out on your mat. The air is cool and damp, the smell of rain still heavy in the room. The fire sighs and the night exhales with it. In the distance, thunder rolls one last time, soft and deep. You close your eyes. The sound isn't warning anymore. It's comfort. The world outside fades into a hum, the steady pulse of rain, fire, and breath, the heartbeat of a city that refuses to sleep. Morning returns with the soft light of renewal, and the city smells faintly of wet ash and baking grain. The rain has washed everything clean, and now the air feels young again, like the world has been freshly built overnight. You rise slowly, listening to the sounds that have become your life's background music. Clay jars clinking, a donkey's bray echoing across the lane, the scrape of a broom sweeping dust from a threshold. The streets are busier now than you remember them ever being. People are everywhere, moving with purpose. There are new faces, strangers who've come from distant settlements, drawn by the hum of trade and the promise of stability. Some bring goods, others skills, others only stories. The city is no longer just a home for the few. It's becoming a magnet for the many. You step outside and follow the crowd toward the market square. The air vibrates with noise, bargaining, laughter, the occasional shout. Stalls line the lanes now, woven mats hung as makeshift roofs, baskets overflowing with figs, dates, and newly ground flour. The smell of roasting fish mingles with that of fresh herbs, the scent sharp and rich. A man plays a stringed instrument near the well, plucking slow, lazy notes that dance above the chatter. People toss him scraps of bread, bits of dried fruit, smiles. The music turns the chaos into rhythm. Even the noise seems to sway in time. You pause beside a group of artisans, each working on something different. One is carving tiny figurines from bone, animals mostly, though one looks suspiciously like a human face. Another hammers copper into thin circles that catch the sunlight, gleaming like coins. The potter from before is here too, his wheel spinning smooth and fast, his hands sure. You pick up one of his finished pots, narrow-necked, perfectly balanced, the surface painted with dark spirals that seem to move even when you hold still. He smiles at you, a quiet pride behind his eyes. Art has found its place here, not as decoration, but as proof of existence. By midday, the heat thickens. The air feels heavy with possibility. You join a group heading toward the temple, the high place, as people still call it. It has grown taller, its base widened, its walls reinforced. The bricks are drying in neat stacks along the side, each stamped with small marks that look like bird tracks. Near the entrance, a gathering forms. People bring offerings, jars of grain, strings of beads, small clay tablets marked with faint symbols. The tablets are new, smooth rectangles of hardened earth, pressed with signs that repeat in careful order. A woman nearby explains that they're records, each one a story told without sound. The first writing. You watch as the scribe, a young man with steady hands, presses a reed stylus into the wet clay, his movements deliberate and slow. The lines curve and meet like rivers, each stroke a promise to remember. You realize that the city has just invented immortality, not for people, but for thought. The crowd murmurs softly as the tablets are placed inside the temple, alongside grain and water jars. The priestess lifts her hands toward the sky and whispers a blessing. The wind shifts, cool against your face, and you feel the hair on your arms rise. For a moment, the entire city seems to hold its breath. Then life resumes. Children run down the slope laughing, a dog chases them, someone drops a pot and curses lightly. The spell breaks, but something of it lingers in the air. A sense that the world has changed again, quietly, without anyone naming it. You spend the afternoon near the river. The water is low now, the dry season approaching. Men dig deeper into the banks to widen the channels. The mud clings to their arms, slick and red. You watch them work in pairs, their movements synchronized, silent. They don't talk about it, but there's unity in their labor, a kind of choreography. One man straightens, stretching his back, and grins at you. "We're making the river behave," he says, half joking, half in awe. And you understand, this is power, not the violent kind, but the patient one. The ability to bend the earth's rhythm without breaking it. Evening arrives with wind. Dust rolls across the plain, swirling in little eddies that shimmer in the sunset. You climb a slope to watch the light fall over the rooftops. From here, the city looks endless, a maze of walls and courtyards and smoke rising in silver ribbons. The river glows like molten bronze. You think about the generations before, wandering, hungry, forever chasing the next horizon. Now you stand on ground that remembers you. The city hums softly beneath your feet, alive, breathing, enduring. As night descends, fires bloom across the rooftops like stars reborn. The wind carries the smell of spice and clay and rain-warmed air. Somewhere a drum begins again, a heartbeat steady and deep. Voices rise with it, not in words, but in sound, an instinct older than language. You close your eyes, listening. The city's song has changed. It's fuller now, layered, complex. Each wall, each fire, each life adds a note. And in that harmony, you hear something new. Permanence. You stay a little longer, watching the fires flicker against the sky until the two become indistinguishable. Earth glowing like heaven, heaven glowing like earth. Then quietly, you lie back on the ground and let the music of the city carry you to sleep. The morning light arrives not as a surprise, but as a rhythm, another turning in the long pulse of days that stretch endlessly now. The city no longer wakes suddenly. It stirs like a creature that knows its body and trusts its heartbeat. Smoke rises before the sun does, curling lazily from hundreds of rooftops. The first sounds are soft. The rustle of straw, the low murmur of someone singing to a child, the wet slap of dough meeting clay oven. You step outside, and the warmth of the air feels familiar, lived in. The streets beneath your feet are no longer just packed dirt. They're smooth from use, burnished by sandals and time. Someone has even laid stones in parts of the main lane, uneven but intentional. The first road, though no one yet calls it that. The walls rise higher every season. Some houses now have small upper rooms, cool in the heat, private in the noise. Ladders lean against them like spines. From above, you can see the city spreading outward, its edges dissolving into fields and then into wild grass. It's hard to say where it ends. Maybe it doesn't. You pass a group of children drawing shapes in the dust. They trace squares and circles, arguing over whose is straighter. One of them draws the temple, its layered form instantly recognizable. Their fingers smudge the lines, but the idea remains clear. Even play here has become practice for creation. In the square, people are gathering again. The traders have returned from the south with news, tales of other cities rising along other rivers. The crowd listens with that restless mixture of awe and disbelief. There are others like us? The idea stirs something both thrilling and uneasy. The world, it seems, is filling up with permanence. A potter nearby laughs softly. "So," he says, "we're not the only ones who thought staying was clever." Someone throws him a half-joking glare, but his smile holds no envy. The city has learned not to measure itself against distance, only endurance. The talk of other cities brings new curiosity. People begin to look outward again, not to wander, but to connect. Paths between settlements are forming, trodden by feet that carry both trade and stories. You imagine those roads, the lifelines of a new world, stretching across plains and deserts, shimmering under the same sun. Midday arrives heavy and slow. The air thickens with heat. The lanes empty as people retreat indoors. Inside, homes are dim and cool, the walls sweating faintly. You sit in the shadow near your hearth, running your fingers along the surface of a clay bowl. It's smooth, almost perfect. You realize how much hands have learned in just a few generations. The knowledge has seeped into the fingers, into the rhythm of touch. When you step outside again, the heat has broken. Clouds gather low and gray, promising rain. You walk toward the temple, now massive enough to cast its own weathered shadow across the square. The walls are painted, reds, blacks, ochres, and on them are marks that flow like reeds bending in the wind. Writing, you realize, is no longer rare. It's everywhere now, on jars, on ledgers, on the very bricks of the temple. Inside, the air smells of oil and incense. You see the scribes seated at low tables, each working with quiet precision. A girl no older than 15 presses a stylus into wet clay, her face set in concentration. She's recording grain rations. How much was stored, how much was traded, who owes what. Her work is as sacred as prayer. You can feel it in the hush around her. Outside again, the city hums. The rain begins in gentle drops, cooling the baked earth. You stand beneath the awning of a shop, watching the ripples spread through the puddles. The lanes shine, reflecting the flicker of torches as dusk arrives. When the downpour slows, people emerge again. The smell of wet dust fills the air, sharp, alive, grounding. The fires are lit and the walls glow with their reflected light. You pass a group of musicians near the well. One beats a drum, another plucks a lyre, and someone else sings, a low, lilting melody about rivers, rain, and the sweetness of bread shared. The sound pulls you closer. A small crowd has gathered, swaying gently. Children dance barefoot in the mud, their laughter ringing through the dark. The song shifts, becomes slower, deeper. You recognize the rhythm. It's the same one the farmers use when cutting grain, the same one the builders use when lifting bricks. The music of labor turned into joy. You look around. Faces glow in the firelight. Clay beads glint. Hands reach for one another in rhythm. You realize you've lived long enough to see something remarkable. This is not just survival anymore. This is culture. The night deepens. The fires die one by one, leaving embers that wink like stars fall into earth. You climb to the roof of your home and sit there watching the glow of the temple in the distance. The air is warm and thick with the smell of smoke and rain. From here, the city looks eternal, like it has always existed and always will. The lines of streets, the pulse of sound, the glow of hearths, all of it feels inevitable. But you remember the first spark, the first hut, the first wall. You remember the sound of your people's laughter when they realized they didn't have to move anymore. You close your eyes, listening to the quiet hum of the world below. The city breathes. The river whispers. The stars blink overhead, their ancient light washing over brick and clay and sleeping lives. You lie back, arms folded behind your head. Somewhere below, a baby cries, and someone soothes it. A pot cracks in the cooling night. A dog sighs, turning twice before settling near a doorway. And in all of that, the cries, the sighs, the tiny noises of ordinary life, you hear the song of continuity. The city endures, and through it, so do you. The next morning begins with wind. Not the gentle kind that stirs the fields, but a dry, restless breath sweeping down from the highlands, carrying grit and the faint metallic scent of distance. You feel it on your skin before you even open your eyes. When you step outside, the world has changed hue. The air tinted with pale gold, the sun diffused through a veil of dust. The city looks softer in this light, like an old painting. People are already awake, adjusting to the day's new mood. Merchants pull cloths over their goods, mothers tie scarves around their faces, and the steady rhythm of sweeping begins. The soft scrape of reed brooms trying and failing to convince the dust to leave. The city sighs and continues breathing. You make your way toward the center. The streets are narrower now, taller, their walls leaning slightly inward, as if conspiring. Windows appear where there were none, wooden shutters opening to let air and gossip pass. The city has learned the art of layers. Somewhere beneath every brick, an older one sleeps. In the square, the scribes sit in the shade of an awning, their fingers stained with clay and ink. They're copying tallies and stories, pressing lines into tablets with quiet authority. You pause to watch one of them, an older man with calloused hands and eyes bright as the river at noon. He tells you that words travel farther than feet, that clay remembers what people forget. You nod, though you're not sure you understand the weight of what he's saying. Someday historians will, but for now, you just marvel at the neatness of his work. A messenger arrives on a donkey, his face streaked with sweat. He's from the neighboring settlement beyond the hills, the one with the stone walls and the strange water wheel that lifts water higher than any hand pump can reach. He brings not grain or goods, but something more potent, news. Strangers have come from beyond the desert, he says, voice cracking. They carry black stones that sparkle in sunlight and make fires hotter than ours. A hush ripples through the crowd. Curiosity, fear, hope. The world once defined by this one river suddenly feels enormous again. You watch as people whisper, speculate, imagine. The elders shake their heads, muttering that such stories always return with the sandstorms. Half-truths, half-dreams. But the young men listen with shining eyes. The city that once built itself on staying now dreams again of moving. As the day stretches, the wind softens. You walk beyond the outer walls where the fields roll wide in gold. Farmers are stacking clay jars into piles, grain storage for the coming dry season. You help them for a while, your hands sinking into the dust, the simple rhythm soothing. There's something ancient and clean about labor that feeds. When the sun starts to fall, you see them, a caravan in the distance, glinting faintly against the horizon. The wind shifts, and you catch a scent unfamiliar, something sharp, resinous, like sap mixed with smoke. You watch as the line of travelers grows clearer. Long robes, tall animals with patient eyes, carts heavy with covered goods. By the time they reach the city gates, night has fallen. Torches flicker in the wind. The guards, really just farmers with spears, step forward, cautious but curious. The leader of the caravan bows low and speaks in a language only half understood. The words roll like sand, full of vowels and rhythm. Trade begins without hesitation. Cloths are unfurled, jars opened, objects revealed. The black stones from the desert gleam like stars trapped in rock. Spices release scents that make your mouth water, sweet, bitter, intoxicating. A woman pours oil from a carved flask, and the smell of it, thick, wild, unfamiliar, spills through the square. You realize as you watch that this is how the world knits itself together, not through conquest or command, but through curiosity. One city leaning toward another, asking quietly, "What do you know that we don't?" By the time the fires burn low, laughter replaces suspicion. Music rises again, hesitant at first, then full. The visitors join in easily. Rhythm is the one language everyone speaks. Someone claps, someone else drums, a child dances in the firelight. The walls of the city seem to breathe outward, making room for new stories. Later, when the strangers sleep and the fires turn to coals, you walk along the edge of the river. The reflection of torchlight trembles on the surface, broken by the current. You look toward the dark horizon and wonder how many other lights are flickering out there tonight. Other hearths, other cities, other hearts learning the same lessons. You crouch down and trail your fingers through the water. It's cool, alive, full of movement. You think of how it connects everything, how this same river might someday be crossed, mapped, named, forgotten, rediscovered. You think of how all beginnings must eventually learn to let go of being new. When you return, the wind has died. The city sleeps, glowing faintly in the starlight. The air smells of spice, smoke, and wet clay. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then falls quiet. You climb onto your roof, lie back, and look up. The stars stretch endlessly, the same ones your ancestors followed when they still moved with the herds. But now you see them differently. They no longer mean direction, they mean reflection. The wind shifts one last time, brushing against your face like a whisper. You've turned the stars into streets. And below, the city murmurs back, yes, and we are not done building. The following morning comes thick with heat, the kind that makes the air shimmer even before the sun clears the horizon. A copper haze hangs over the city. Every sound seems to travel slower through it. The creak of carts, the grunt of oxen, the clatter of pots from open courtyards. Dust motes spin lazily in the light that pours between the buildings. You step outside and feel it immediately, the sense that something is shifting again. The city no longer feels like a gathering of homes. It feels like an organism, pulsing, growing in ways no one completely controls. Down the lane, people are hauling bricks in long chains, their feet kicking up dry soil. The walls they raise are higher than any before, surrounding the temple like protective arms. You hear someone mention the word district for the first time. It sounds strange, but right. At the far end of the square, a group of men argue, not with anger, but with urgency. They are scribes, merchants, elders, and builders trying to solve something new. Who decides what gets built, where, and why? There are no kings here, no written laws yet, but the city's size has made decisions too large for one voice. A woman, her arms crossed, interrupts the argument. If the river decides when we eat, she says evenly, then perhaps it should also decide where we build. The men pause, exchange glances, then slowly nod. The first hint of governance, born not from authority but reason. You move on. The smell of cooking grain mingles with the sharp tang of fresh mortar. Two boys race past you, carrying buckets of water between them, sloshing half their cargo down the street. They laugh, breathless, their laughter echoing off the walls. In the workshops, hammers ring. The metal workers have grown more ambitious. Bronze glints in the sunlight, tools, ornaments, blades. They work side by side, sharing fire and knowledge. You pause to watch a young apprentice hammer a thin strip into the shape of a small crescent. He glances up and grins. "For my mother," he says. She says the moon watches her dreams. You smile. The gesture feels both intimate and monumental. These aren't just tools anymore. They're symbols. The city has begun to dream in shape and metal. By noon, the square fills again. The traders from the desert have returned, joined by others, new faces with darker skin, lighter hair, different clothes. They carry polished shells from a faraway coast, stones carved with patterns no one here has seen before. The air smells of spice, oil, and sweat. A small boy plays with a toy cart carved from wood, its wheels turning unevenly. He drags it along the lane, making hoarse sounds under his breath. You catch yourself smiling at him, then realize what you're seeing. Imitation of trade, imitation of movement. The city's children are learning what their parents have made real. As the day wears on, the sun bakes the walls until they glow red. The fields shimmer at the edge of sight. Far off, a dust storm rises like a ghost, but it never reaches you. The river protects this place, bending the world around it. You sit beside the canal with a group of workers. They share bread and roasted lentils, dipping them in oil dark as amber. The conversation drifts lazily between laughter and memory, stories of floods survived, harvests lost, children born. One man talks of building a wall so strong the river itself will yield. Another shakes his head. You can't command the river, he says softly. You can only learn its moods. The others nod. They've learned not to challenge what feeds them. Civilization grows best in cooperation with what it fears. When the sun begins to fall, the light softens. The city exhales. Smoke rises in thin ribbons. You walk toward the rooftops again, where the wind feels cooler. The roofs have changed. Some now hold gardens, pots of herbs, vines creeping along wooden rails. From up here, the air smells faintly of mint and smoke. Below, you can see the temple glowing orange in the fading light, its highest tier crowned with flickering torches. The hum of the city rises with the dusk. Dogs barking, women calling children home, the low note of a horn signaling the end of the workday. You watch as groups gather near the square. Some bring small lamps made of clay, flames dancing behind thin walls. They set them in a circle around the open ground, one light after another, until the night blooms with a soft amber glow. It's beautiful, but it's more than that. It's coordination. It's unity made visible. A storyteller begins to speak. His voice is low, slow, deliberate. He tells the old tales of the river's birth, of gods who shaped the stars, of the first woman who baked the first bread. People listen, eyes half closed, swaying gently. You recognize parts of the story, but other parts have changed. Each retelling reshapes the past a little, polishing it like a stone passed from hand to hand. You sit on the roof, the wind brushing your hair, and watch the faces below illuminated by lamplight. The sound of the story blends with the crackle of fire and the sigh of wind through reeds. It's hypnotic. This quiet communion is the city's true invention, not walls or tools or trade. It's this shared remembering, this agreement to believe together. When the story ends, the crowd lingers. No one wants to move, as though afraid the silence will undo the magic. The flames tremble, reflected in hundreds of eyes. You lean back, staring at the stars. They shimmer faintly, blurred by the rising smoke. Somewhere in the darkness, another city might be doing the same, lighting lamps, telling stories, learning how to stay. You close your eyes. The wind smells of clay and grain and old rain. Below you, the city breathes, steady and alive. Tomorrow, the walls will grow higher. Tomorrow, the scribes will write new symbols. Tomorrow, the fields will stretch farther, but tonight the world feels complete. A single flame in the dark, teaching the earth to dream. The first light of dawn slides over the horizon, pale and hesitant. The air still holds the coolness of night, and for a brief moment before the fires are stoked and the city begins its morning chorus, everything feels still. You wake to that stillness, the quiet hum beneath the silence, the faint pulse of a city that never truly sleeps. When you step outside, the lane glows gold in the early sun. The smell of ash and barley porridge lingers in the air. You can hear the faint sound of someone sweeping, the dry rhythm of a broom brushing clay. The walls around you are different now, smoother, straighter. Someone has learned to align bricks with string. Someone else has painted a doorway red to mark it as a shop. You make your way toward the square, which is no longer just a place to gather. It's organized now, sections for trade, for food, for talk. The merchants have built awnings of woven cloth, casting patterned shadows that sway across the ground. You can smell the spices before you see them: cumin, coriander, cinnamon. Their scents tangle in the air, rich and dizzying. The traders speak in a dozen dialects, voices layered into a single language of gesture and tone. They hold up goods for display: beads, salt, dyed fabrics, bronze tools, and their hands move like water. The crowd surges and flows around them. It feels alive in a way the river once did. You stop at a stall where a young man sells small clay tablets marked with symbols. He tells you they're blessings, phrases pressed by temple scribes for good harvest, safe childbirth, peaceful dreams. You pick one up. The symbols are delicate, looping, hypnotic. It feels strange to hold a prayer made solid. The idea of words existing outside the body, outliving their speaker, still unsettles you. Further down, a man haggles over the price of grain. Two women argue cheerfully about the quality of dye. Children weave through the crowd with trays of fruit, laughing, selling to whoever will listen. Somewhere, a drum keeps time. You look around and realize this is more than survival now. This is momentum. The city has learned how to feed itself, to build, to trade, to remember. And now it's learning how to want. At the edge of the square, the temple bells ring, their hollow sound rolling over the rooftops. It's a signal, the start of the morning offerings. You follow the others through the lanes, past painted walls and reed doors, toward the towering steps of the temple. The air changes as you climb. It's cooler here, the wind catching in the open tiers. Inside, the space glows with filtered light. The air smells of oil, flowers, and earth. Priests move silently between altars, their robes soft against the floor. You watch them pour water from silver vessels, trace symbols in the air, murmur to unseen gods. They don't look at you, and you don't speak. You stand in the hush and feel the weight of continuity pressing down like heat. The walls here are carved, not deeply, not yet, but enough. Scenes of rivers and floods, of people carrying baskets, of stars arranged above the world. A history written in repetition. You run your fingers over the grooves, tracing lives you will never know. As you step outside again, the sun has climbed high as bleaching the streets in light. The city gleams, the roofs shimmer. People move slower now, finding shade where they can. The smell of cooking returns. Roasted lentils, bread, fish. You buy a piece of flatbread still warm and eat it as you walk. Beyond the market, the lanes open into a quiet courtyard lined with houses. A woman sits on a low stool, braiding reeds into baskets. She hums as she works, her song the same one you've heard at every harvest since childhood. Nearby, a boy grinds pigment with a stone, mixing it with water in a bowl. The color blooms, ochre, deep and rich. He uses it to paint a small figure on the wall, a sun with outstretched arms. You ask him why. He shrugs. So it doesn't forget to rise. The answer makes you laugh softly. But later, as you walk, you keep thinking about it. The painted sun glowing faintly on the wall. The prayers pressed into clay. The stories told around the fires. Every act here, work, worship, creation, is an attempt to make sure the world remembers. By afternoon, the heat breaks. Wind rushes through the streets, carrying dust and petals from the riverbanks. You climb the slope beyond the temple, where the city sprawls below like a living mosaic. The fields ripple, the canals flash silver, the rooftops gleam. From here, you can see how far it stretches. The new walls rising to the north, the outlines of more homes by the southern bend. The river glints beyond it all, steady as breath. You realize the city has outgrown its name. It's no longer just a settlement or a people. It's an idea that life can be shaped, that chaos can be taught rhythm. Evening drapes itself slowly across the rooftops. The air cools, the light softens to amber. You hear laughter spilling from the courtyards, the hiss of fires being lit, the low murmur of voices. Smoke curls upward, carrying the day's memories into the sky. You sit on the slope, watching the city shimmer under the first stars. Somewhere, a flute begins to play, a melody so old it feels like the earth itself is remembering it. The notes rise, fall, fade, and as you listen, you feel it again, that pulse beneath everything, the soundless heartbeat of the city. You close your eyes, the breeze smells of clay and grain and distance. The world has changed forever, and yet somehow it feels exactly like home. The following day begins with the smell of smoke and damp grain. The air is heavy, pressed close by the lingering warmth of the night before. The city hums already, voices overlapping, footsteps blending into the steady percussion of living. The dust hasn't yet risen, and everything feels softer, as though the day is holding its breath before the work begins. You walk through the lane and pass a mural newly painted on a wall. It shows the river as a winding serpent, coiling through the fields, dotted with small boats like scales. Someone has painted fish leaping from it, farmers standing along its banks, their hands lifted in thanks. The color is crude, but the emotion behind it is unmistakable: pride. The city now understands that the river is not just sustenance, it is identity. At the edge of the square near the well, a crowd has gathered. Two men argue in sharp tones, the words bouncing between walls. One claims another shorted him in a grain trade, the other denies it. Voices rise. A woman from the crowd steps forward and tells them to calm down, but they don't. It's not the first time this has happened. The scribe who keeps records arrives holding a clay tablet and a reed stylus. He listens, nods, and begins to write. Names, quantities, witnesses. The noise fades as he speaks, the scratch of stylus on clay commanding quiet. When he finishes, both men nod. No one shouts anymore. The record stands. And in that moment, you feel the shape of something new forming. Law. Not rules shouted by strength, but trust set in clay. Later, as the market wakes, the smell of baking bread returns, mingling with the sharp sweetness of dates. The air fills with the chatter of bargaining. You hear laughter, the clang of metal, the low hum of someone singing a work tune. Across the square, a woman kneels by her stall, arranging jars of oil in neat rows. Each one glows amber in the sunlight, catching the dust in suspended gold. A child passes with a basket of eggs. He counts aloud as he walks, not for your benefit, but for his own pleasure. The joy of numbers newly learned. Counting, you think, is a quiet miracle, the ability to give shape to abundance. You leave the market and walk toward the edge of the city, where the walls stand tall and unbroken. From here, you can see the river's curve, the shimmer of water reflecting the sun. Workers move along the top of the wall, setting bricks in rhythmic precision. Beyond them, the plains stretch wide and empty, dust rising where the wind calms the earth. You stop near a guard's post, a wooden platform shaded by a reed canopy. A young man stands there, his spear upright beside him. He's not watching for war. There are no enemies yet. He's watching the horizon, the way the clouds shift, the way the birds fly. He turns to you and grins. The sky tells us when the river will rise, he says. If you listen carefully, you can hear it breathing. You look out over the land, listening. At first, there's only the wind, but then you hear it. The faint, distant rumble. Not thunder. The sound of water moving, unseen but coming. The flood season approaches. The next days become a flurry of preparation. People patch the canals, reinforce storage pits, move livestock to higher ground. The temple bells ring at dusk each evening, signaling the count of days until the river swells. It's both practical and sacred, a rhythm everyone obeys. When the flood finally comes, it comes like a sigh, not a storm. The water creeps forward, silent and inevitable, filling every hollow, darkening the fields. The river overflows its banks, and for a moment you can't tell where land ends and water begins. The city holds its breath. Then, laughter. Children splash in the rising pools, men wade knee-deep, planting reeds as markers. The flood is not a disaster, it's a reunion. The earth greeting the sky, the people greeting their source. For days, the city stands half reflected in water. The air smells of wet clay and new life. Ducks glide between rooftops, their calls echoing like tiny horns. The water leaves behind silt, black, rich, full of promise. When it finally recedes, it gifts the city with renewal. You walk through the streets after the flood, mud squelching underfoot. The houses are streaked with lines of dried water, each mark a reminder of the river's reach. People scrub their walls, rebuild, laugh. Someone jokes that the river has signed its name across the city again. The scribes emerge with new tablets, recording what was lost, what was found, what was reborn. The flood is measured not in damage, but in memory. As the fields dry, planting begins anew. You stand by the riverbank, watching rows of hands press seeds into the wet earth. The same seeds as always, the same gesture, the same hope. When night comes, you climb the slope beyond the walls. The sky is vast and dark, the stars burning sharp above the quiet city. The air smells of damp soil and smoke. You can still hear the river, low and steady, whispering to itself. You sit, feeling the earth still warm beneath you, and think about everything that has happened. The huts turn to homes, the fire turned to hearth, the words turn to records. Every act of survival has become an act of creation. The stars shimmer above you. Below, the city glows faintly, its fires flickering like reflections of the heavens. You realize you can't tell where the sky ends and the city begins anymore. And maybe that's the point. For the first time in human history, the ground and the heavens are mirroring each other, not through gods or myths, but through intention. You close your eyes, the river breathes, the city hums, the stars listen. Civilization has learned to rise and fall with the water, and in doing so, it has learned to endure. The night folds gently around the city as if the sky itself were leaning close to listen. The fires burn lower now, their light slipping across walls like quiet thoughts. The air has cooled, the dust has settled. What was noise in the day becomes rhythm in the dark, the soft coo of doves on rooftops, the faint creak of rope as boats drift against the river's edge, the whisper of reeds brushing each other in the wind. You walk slowly through the streets, past doors left slightly open, each spilling a slice of amber light. Inside, families murmur good night. A woman hums as she braids her daughter's hair. Someone laughs softly, then sighs. A pot cools beside the hearth. The city, once 1,000 separate movements, now breathes in unison. You reach the edge of the river. It glows faintly beneath the stars, every ripple catching a fragment of moonlight. The floodwaters are gone, leaving the ground rich and dark. The air smells clean, full of promise and rest. You sit on a smooth stone, still warm from the day, your fingers trailing through the water. It feels like silk, like the pulse of something eternal. The temple bells ring once in the distance, a low, long tone that hangs in the air before dissolving into quiet. You think of all the hands that have built this place. The bricklayers, the farmers, the potters, the storytellers. None of them meant to make history. They only meant to make home. The wind picks up, cool and kind. You tilt your head back and the stars look close enough to touch. Somewhere above them, time itself is turning, slow, patient, endless. You can feel its weight in your bones, the steady rhythm that carries everything forward. You breathe in deeply. The scent of clay, smoke, and night fills you. The river whispers against the shore, saying what it always says: stay, rest, build, begin again. The fires fade one by one until the city lies in darkness, glowing only where embers linger. You close your eyes, the ground is soft beneath you, the night warm against your skin. You imagine the first hand that pressed into wet clay thousands of years ago, shaping, dreaming, leaving a mark. That same impulse hums quietly through you now, as if the earth is still remembering the shape of that touch. The river sighs, the wind stills. The world pauses between one breath and the next, and in that pause, you realize what civilization truly is. Not walls, not temples, not the sound of tools, but this. The silence after the work is done, the peace that comes from staying, the warmth of the fire fading slowly into sleep. You lie back, eyes heavy, heart slow, the stars blur, the city breathes once more, steady and calm. You breathe with it, and the night holds you gently, without hurry. Sleep comes softly, like the river returning, quiet, certain, endless. The night deepens and the air grows cool enough that you can see your breath in the faint glow of the embers. Somewhere behind you, a door closes, slow and careful, as though not to wake the earth itself. The city has fallen utterly quiet now. The last voices have faded into whispers, the last footsteps into memory. You stay by the river, your hands resting in your lap, the water's slow rhythm matching your pulse. The moon hangs high, white, watchful, patient. Its reflection trembles on the surface, breaking and reforming with each ripple. It feels alive, like it's breathing with you. A soft wind moves through the reeds, carrying the scent of ash and grain. It sounds like words you can't quite understand, syllables too old to belong to speech. You think of the first fires, the first shelters, the first seeds pressed into soil by uncertain hands. You think of how every act that built this city began the same way. A small motion, done without knowing it would matter. You look toward the walls, those long ribbons of clay and sweat and time. They're uneven in the moonlight, patched and worn, but there's beauty in that. The way imperfection holds history. You can almost see the fingerprints in the mortar, each one a signature of a life now dust. Somewhere far away, an owl calls, its voice low and full. The sound rolls over the rooftops like the last echo of the day. The river answers with its own murmur, and for a moment you can't tell where the sound begins or ends. You lie back on the ground, the cool earth pressing against your spine. Above you, the stars blur and multiply until they seem endless. You trace one with your eyes, then another, until they all fade into a single soft glow. You think of all the fires burning in all the cities that will one day rise from this one. You think of how those lights will look from above, each one a reflection of this same quiet hope. The world feels both infinite and small. You close your eyes, the hum of the river becomes a lullaby, the rhythm of time itself. The earth beneath you is steady, kind, old enough to hold your dreams. You let the last thoughts drift away, the markets, the songs, the walls, the endless cycle of rise and rest. All that remains is warmth, the warmth of everything built, everything remembered. The wind slows, the water stills. The city sleeps so deeply it feels like the world is starting over. You breathe once more, a long and easy breath, and the darkness gathers you in its arms. The night holds, the stars keep watch, the river whispers its eternal secret. We stayed, and then at last you sleep.